Good Monday morning, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show with this man, bringing everything chameleon, Mitri Gorgamonic. How you doing, D?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Great. You want to start with the disclaimer?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, keep in mind, Will and I and Market Chameleon, we're not a registered investment advisor. We're not a broker-dealer. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need advice, call your registered investment advisor, call your broker. That's what they're there for. There's the disclaimer.
Excellent.
And let me share my screen. While I'm doing that, if you're joining us for the first time, Will and I, we do these shows in the morning to try to help answer questions you may have about the Market Chameleon tools, data, analytics. If you have a question, type it into that live chat on YouTube. Will's watching it. He'll read it back to me. And to give you guys a couple minutes to put those questions in, what we'll do is start out taking a look at the pre-market report to see if we could get some insights on what's trading in the pre-market hours, what's going on in the pre-market hours, and then we'll move on to the questions. So over here, pre-market report, these are stocks trading in pre-market hours. Up here, we have a calendar view. You could go back dates and look at what happened in the pre-market hours, those historical dates. Today, we're November 6th, and this is what's going on so far from a high level. We see that 595 stocks are trading higher in the pre-market hours so far. 235 stocks are trading lower. As far as volume goes, we got 93.7 million shares trading higher, 46.1 million shares trading lower. And if we convert that volume to dollar value, we got $2.3 billion worth of stock trading higher, $500 million worth of stock trading lower. So from that perspective, it looks like so far trading in the pre-market hours is leaning towards the bullish side, bullish sentiment. We could see that would be already, 1, 2, 3, fourth day in a row since November 1st. So far, every day in the morning we've been seeing some pretty bullish, upbeat sentiment. We still have a half hour to go, but that's what's going on so far. Let's take a look at it from a couple more perspectives. If we move down here, we get a list of our most active stocks in the pre-market hours, our biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. I see 90 stocks made our percentage gainers list, 25 on our decliners list, biggest decliners list. So that also indicates more bullish sentiment. But if we look closer at this list, we do see there are small cap stocks in there, ETFs. It could be a leverage product, an inverse ETF. So pretty much any security that's listed on a major U.S. exchange, if it's trading in pre-market hours and meets our conditions, our thresholds, it can make this list. And to narrow down to a small group of stocks, we could use the filters here above. If you have a watch list, you could filter by your watch list. We have this in ETF. We're going to use this filter here. So when you click on it, you get a drop-down menu to select from. We got some broad-based ETFs. We got some sector ETFs. Let's select this one, SPY. That's the S&P 500 ETF. When you click on it, the list below will get filtered by stocks that are holdings in the SPY ETF, which are the S&P 500 constituents. And 3 made our biggest percentage gainers list, 1 on the biggest percentage decliners list. Again, it has to meet certain thresholds. So this one sort of neutral, leaning more towards the bullish side of things. So we gave it a couple minutes. Will, if you have some questions, I'll take them now.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note. Sandra is on today, Freeman, and she had asked a question last week about uptrends.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I did share that video that you did on the subject. So I just wanted to let her know. We did have we've never done this before, but we did have a question on YouTube.
Yeah.
Uh, it was from Pearl.
Mhm.
Hi, can you get past data of this large volume burst trade reports? The person says, I just want to see if I find a trend. So is there a way to get, we've been talking about the large volume burst trade reports. Is there a way to get older data? I guess the person's asking.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, thank you for the question, and hopefully they're watching. But yeah, so when we talk about the volume burst, I'm going to come over here on the price action analysis. And over here, under this price action analysis, we take the intraday data. We parse the actual trades intraday to come up with insights. And I'll just go to the trading hours. This is during trading hours VWAP. And under this VWAP, what we have here is, minute by minute summary of the trades. And then within there, we try to point out or see what may be unusual or interesting. And one of them is these volume bursts where a large volume traded in a particular minute. Okay, more, if we track the volume history, and for that time of day, if there's a big volume burst, we give there an indicator so we could go back and look at what happened. So here in SPY, we see that on Friday, we detected 2 large volume bursts and 1 large sell volume burst. So two on the buy side, 1 on the sell side. The total dollar value for those 2 were $681 million worth of stock for an average price of $434.97, volume weighted average price. And the price impact was on average 19 cents. Okay. On the sell side, we had 1 volume burst for a total dollar value of $204.5 million for a VWAP price of $433.82. And you can see here that the price impact on that was $0.50. So if we clicked on that at 10:26, so over here it tells you the times that we detected it. So when you click on it, it takes you over here to the volume table, and we could see here this sell burst. All right, 471,000 shares traded in that minute, which is $204 million worth of stock traded in that 1 minute, which we clocked as 2.7 standard deviations above the typical average for this time period. Okay, so that's why it got in there. And we see that what happened was between 10:25, right? So the VWAP price at 10:25 was 434.32, and it dropped to 433.82 from this minute to this minute, giving it a price impact of negative 50 cents, which, that's why this is a sell burst, right? That on this huge volume, we detected a drop of 50 cents. So that's the sell burst. And then on the opposite side, the buy burst would be, here at 357. So 357, we detected a large buy burst, 2.9 standard deviations above the average for this time period, which was a buy burst. So you could see here at 358, even though there was more volume, this was still typical for this period. Okay, for this period, this was a little bit above. So by doing that, we just see something that there's an unusual amount of stock that traded, and we track like the price impact of it, and then we keep a record of. So that's over here. Now, as far as history goes, is this a lot? Right? Is this a lot? Is this a little bit? Is this an average? So we could go back and say, well, in SPY, typically when we see buy burst, right? So there might be days with none, but when we see buy burst, how many do we see on a typical day? And how much dollar value do we see? Same thing on the sell side. So if we looked at the last 30 days, we see that typically we see 4 on the buy side, 3 on the sell side, and about equal amount, 1.1 billion. So yes, this leaned more towards the buy in SPY. Now remember, SPY is an S&P 500 ETF. So you got to consider there's other things besides SPY that's impacting SPY price, because it's an index of S&P 500. There are components in there, there are futures there, but I'm just using this as an example. So what we see here is that even though that, yes, there is almost 3 times as much in dollar value in the buy burst, that it's still, not a huge amount. The 681 million, it's not a huge amount relative to what we've seen in history. And the price impact here, right, is telling us how liquid the market is when these bursts come in. So the bigger the price impact, the less liquid it is, right? So when somebody came in to sell these 200, that the underlying bid at that time, the markets, in the dark pool or on the lit exchange, at that moment, we're not as liquid as we see here, typically, and even to the upside at that moment. And that volume, right, caused a $0.50 move in SPY, right? So there at that moment, there wasn't that much liquidity. So the seller basically had to step up or in exit terms, dollar terms, had to pay up to get out. All right. So it wasn't as liquid. There wasn't as much support at that moment. The buy burst, they came in and we could see, yes, there were 3 times as much, but on a relative basis, there was liquidity there that those buy orders were able to access, that the price impact itself to the stock, right, was not as liquid as what we've seen in the last 30 days. And we measure these right now in dollar terms instead of percentage terms, because the amounts are very small in percentage terms. We're talking about a 1-minute tick. So in percentage terms, it would be just so small. We just keep it on dollar terms at this stage. So as far as like history goes, the first one is this here is kind of a history really quickly as a reference to see, well, are these here, how are these volumes, trade impacts, the amounts relative to what we typically see. Okay, so this kind of gives us a benchmark. Are we going high? And keep in mind, like these are average. So I think we had a Fed meeting that those days will typically be higher, right? You're going to see a lot more bursts on the Fed days. So from benchmarking, we put it right there, right? We put it right here, and you could see it. if you wanted to go back days, a particular day, we can just pull this down and go back a day. Okay, so we could go back a day or wherever day. When was the Fed meeting, Will? Was it what was the date?
I think it was was it Thursday? Last Thursday?
Was that is it November 1st or 2nd? Was it the 2nd? I think it was Wednesday. Usually it's on a Wednesday. Let me take a look. All right, so maybe this was, I think it was on what was last Wednesday's date? You remember?
Last Wednesday?
Yeah. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Yeah.
Last Wednesday was the 1st.
Okay, so let's go back to the 1st. So on the 1st, that's when the Fed announced, right, the decision, the Fed decision. So over here, so here we go. So it came back to here, and you could see here, right, how much different it is. We got 11 buy bursts, 10 sell bursts, right? Twice, more than twice what we usually typically see. You could see there are $2.6 billion worth of sell, $2.6 billion worth of buy burst. So more than twice that we typically see. All right. So that's showing you, how on that day things behaved. And you could see the price impacts here also were a little bit more, right? A little bit less liquid than usual. And it looks to me like they were, if I'm just scrolling through, because there was 11 of them, I'm not going to go to each one of them, but if I just scroll down, it looks to me like they were distributed almost evenly from before the announcement. So the announcement was at 2 o'clock, right? So we see a lot of people repositioning in the 10 o'clock, 10:23, 10:24. And then after 2 o'clock, 2:35, 2:40, 2:50, all the way up to the close. On the sell side, kind of like those didn't actually come in until after 2. So what do we see here? On the buy side, we've seen right up, even prior to the announcement, we started to see buy bursts. I don't see any sell of them, anything on the sell side prior to that. So long positions kind of starting ahead of the announcement. Okay. Then after the announcement, we probably, we had a good on the buy side and sell side. Right. People just repositioning themselves. So that's what happened on the day of Fed announcement. But I'm showing you this because this will also move up the 30, the last 30 days. These averages will move up because these days will have a more outsized impact on the average, right? Like a bigger outlier will bring up the average. But days like this, where there are major economic events, we will see, and which is not even unusual, right? But we will see bigger movement of large money, right? Bigger repositioning because now we have certain news indicators coming out that people are that large firms are reacting to. So that would be one way to go back to a particular day, right? If you wanted to go back a particular day, you pull down this menu and then go back, and you could see then what happened that day, right? So, for example, I don't know. Let's say you wanted to see, 201, right? So 201, right? There's that initial sell burst, and right before that, interest rate decision, right? So 2 o'clock, there's the interest rate decision. That's when it came out. Right at that moment, we saw an immediate buy burst. All right. And then following that, wait, I think I went the wrong way. So what we did was immediately we saw a buy burst over here, $222 million worth. And then a 209 million sell burst right after that. And again, it's differences of opinions, right? People are taking it in, and some people can look at it as something positive. Some people could do something negative at that moment. So, but that's how it behaved immediately. So I don't know if that was that.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful.
Right. Okay. So,
we only got a few minutes left. We did get a question from a new chameleon who came in today, and he's asking, is it possible to add index options from the CMA to your website, sir, such as VIX?
Right. So the index options right now, we don't display. We are working on them, and we're trying to get them in because we do get requests for index options, SPX, VIX, NDX. So we're working. I know right now we're definitely working because we're bringing in the data into our database. So we do have access to that data. We're bringing it into our database, and we're working on the analytics and setting it up. Because the index options they're a different model. There are differences in the index options that are you don't fit in the same structure and model as a regular equity, right? They're cash settled or European. They have different types of settlement dates. They actually trade. Their trading hours are different. So because of all these nuances, we couldn't just plug it in and bring it up. We have to work out all those differences, and there's a lot of data there. Indexes have a lot of strikes, a lot of options, and so forth. So right now I would say right now we don't have it. You wouldn't be able to get it at this moment, but this is something that we should have in the future, because I know we already have the data coming into our database, and we're starting to work with it.
Well, there you go. Thanks for the question.
Yep.
Nothing else. Did you have any last thoughts for the chameleon, or anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think that that's it. If there are no questions, we only have a couple minutes left. I'll leave it there.
All right. Well, we didn't have Rob today. Rob's away, so no questions from Rob. But thanks for joining, everyone. Great job. Great questions. Thanks, D.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there, and hope to see you guys tomorrow.